Okay, I'm going to start by wetting the paper all over quite generously. In order for this technique to work, or this effect to work, you need a fair amount of water. Now I'm going to be using granulating paint, super granulating paint. It's made by Schminky, the ones I've got. You can get different brands. Now this is in response to a question I had from a member on Patreon who asked me about them essentially, and I couldn't answer because I'd never used them, so I picked up a few different sets, and so I'm going to run through a little demo. It's the first time I've used them, so let's see how they work. I've got 4 of their sets. This one's called Haze, this one's Tundra, there's one called Galaxy and Deep Sea. Quite nice colours, quite earthy, so I think they'll lend themselves nicely to this photo that I took a few days ago over my local park, and I thought the sky especially would work quite well. Get a nice little bit of granulation going on, especially in those blues and hopefully in those oranges. Now I think the paints are a little bit more muted than the colours in that photograph there, but that's fine. I quite like the way it's going to be a little bit more subdued than the photograph. Photographs tend to overcompensate really for the saturation and the darks and everything like that, so maybe these paints will actually correct that and make it more realistic. So there's quite a lot of water on the paper, and I've brought in some of that blue. Already I can see it's granulating quite nicely. Not too much by the looks of it. It's not like I've used Lunar Black, I think it's called, and that's a Daniel Smith colour, and that really very heavily granulates. Now it's not as extreme as that, which is fine by me. I think Lunar Black is it's a useful colour, but you really have to choose when you're going to use it, unless you're really going for a strong granulating effect. So far I quite like the granulation in these. It's not over the top. So I drag some of that orange, Tundra Orange it's called. It's kind of reminding me a little bit of a burnt sienna. So I'm guessing mixed with the blue I should be able to make some darks out of that. Let's just move that hair off the paper there. And so I'm allowing this to mix on the paper. Let's drag a few little areas out for those wispy clouds in the sky. Now let's mix some of that blue and that Tundra Orange together. Let's see if we can make a grey with that for some clouds. That's quite a nice warm grey, I think, so I'll drag some of that in. I'll get some nice granulation in there as well. Seems to me that the blue granulates a little bit more than the orange. Let's mix that up. Fairly dark now. Bring in a little cloud shape from the right hand side as well. It's very warm today as well, so my paper's drying quite quickly, so I'm trying to work while it's still wet to see if I can maximise that effect. Let's lift some of that grey up into the sky as well. I'll clean the brush off, I think, and swap to a smaller sable. Let's get some of that orange, just neat, and lay some of that in towards where the horizon's going to be. And they're very natural looking colours. I really quite like that effect. Now this isn't a paid demonstration or anything like that. I'm not affiliated with Schminky at all, just wanted to answer the question, so I picked up a set. Let's go into that Tundra Green. Again, very earthy looking. Very olive, muted green. Quite nice on its own, actually. Now, I don't know what the pigments are. I've not actually gone that far into it. I've not looked at the the makeup of these paints. If anybody knows, then let me know. Also, if you know how they make them granulate, then I'd be interested to hear that. Is it a granulation medium they mix in with the paint? Let's mix a little bit of orange into that green, so get a little bit warmer right down into the foreground. I'll probably cover a lot of this foreground up actually once it's dry, but let's lay some of this green down. Let's bring it all the way down. Grab a little bit of everything there on the palette. There's a small amount of granulation going on down the bottom there. Maybe it's not granulating as much because the paper's dried out a touch, but that's fine. I want most of the effect to be in the sky anyway, so I'm going to allow that to dry naturally. Okay, it's been probably about 45 minutes, and there's a lot of granulation going on in the sky. I'm quite happy with that effect. Not so much down in the land there, but I kind of expected that as the paper had started to dry off a little bit. But certainly in the sky, I'm really quite pleased with that effect. I think it's very nice. So I'm going to lay some dark down across this land, and I'll bring in some of those trees silhouetted on the horizon, so I can get quite dark now. So let's go into that tundra blue. Again, like I said a little while back, I'm not sure of the pigment codes or anything like that in these paints. I've not really not dived that deep into them, to be honest with you. I just got the sets and now I'm just painting for the first time just to see what happens. But the blue is very much like an ultramarine, and so I'd be interested to know really what makes them granulate as much. I suppose I could do a bit of research myself, but if anybody does know, then drop me a comment, let me know. Okay, let's get some quite strong dark down into this land now and really get a contrast between land and sky. And hopefully I'll make that light in the sky pop that little bit more. Let's mix some more of the tundra orange into that mix. A little bit more of the blue as well. Let's grab a little bit of everything there. It makes a very warm dark. And I've really got to start working very quickly, I think, because it's drying out ever so quickly on the paper. As soon as the paint hits the paper, it's pretty much dry. Okay, lay that in very dark down in the foreground. And that first wash is still shining through there. It's quite transparent, which is nice. I'll give it a little spray with a mist bottle. Might get a tiny little bit more granulation going on in there. Now I can bring some of those trees in on that horizon. Not really anything in the way of a distant hill or anything like that in this one. I was looking uphill when I took the photograph, so it's looking up to the top of a hill and the trees there, so I want to try and capture some of that silhouette look. And I don't think I'm going to bother copying the reference exactly. I'm going to try and find a balance as such, so I'll move things about a little bit and just find the shapes that I like the most. Let's squeeze out a little bit more of that orange. And one thing I've noticed actually is they're not that heavily pigmented, so you end up using quite a lot of paint, or I have so far. And I think that's probably because when the paint hits the water, it dissipates quite a lot. But anyway, quite enjoying the paint so far. So let's get some of these trees in. Let's bring some dark right across the top of that hill. And every time I go back, varying that mixture a tiny little bit more orange, and then a little bit more of the blue, just to get some variations in these darks. So a little bit more orange into this tree. It's got the most light behind it, so I can have a little bit of a warm glow in this tree, hopefully. And make sure I don't cover up all the light behind it, so some nice light effect coming through that tree. So drag a little bit more dark in at the base of them. Suggest some little trunks coming up as well. Don't want to do too much. They're quite a distance away, so I can't see any detail there. Let's put some more little tree shapes down on this right hand side. Now keeping these shapes very simple. Very little water in my brush at this stage as well, so I'm getting a little bit of that dry brush effect. And that helps me to paint a tree shape very quickly. Let's mix this up really quite dark now. And let's drag some texture in across the land in the foreground. Again, dry brush, very little water. Just enough water in the brush to allow the paint to move around. And I think I've mixed it up about as dark as I can go now. So save these darks right down into the foreground. Try and get a sense of aerial perspective. Don't want the hillside to look too flat. So flick up a few little vertical marks as well. Suggest a little bit of grass and little bits of texture. Not too much though. Okay, let's take a little step back, see if there's anything that needs to be done. So I think I'll pick up the small brush. Let's grab a little bit more of that orange. Tidy up the shape of these trees. Suggest a few darks here and there. A couple of little tree trunks, a few little branches. Make some tiny little connections along the way as well. Little lost and found dark edges. Tiny bit of texture, gone a little bit flat on the left hand side there. Okay, just step back again. I think we're pretty much done. Now I've dried that and I'm looking and I think I want a little bit more texture just down in the foreground. I mean, it's only a quick demonstration, but still, let's try and make some kind of a finished painting. So some more blue, some more of that orange, quite dark, and let's flick up some hard edges down in the foreground, suggest some little bits of grass. Everything dried quite flat down there, so I'm laying on almost neat paint. So very little water there. Just a few little bits of texture. It helps to push that distant tree line back and also adds a nice bit of contrast between the sky and the dark of the land. Now the sun had gone down behind that hill, shining that light right up into the sky, and it was like something that I wanted to try and capture, just a little bit of that essence of that effect. So grab a little bit more of everything on the palette, a few more little grass shapes just down in the foreground. Let's make sure I don't go too much of this as well. I can feel myself getting a little bit carried away, but a couple more marks and I think we'll call that finished. So I think that'll do for now. Okay, that's the demo done. So let's use in granulating paints. I used Schminky super granulating paints for this. This was the Tundra set. I did pick up a few of their little 3 packs, little 5mm tubes. Other brands do make granulating paints as well. Like I said before, it's not a paid promotion or anything like that. I'm not affiliated with Schminky in any way, but on the back of this demo, I really like the paints. I would recommend them if anybody's asking. So I like the light effect. I like the way they're quite subdued colours, very natural looking colours. So I painted a sunset type scene without having to resort to using oranges and bright yellows, cadmium yellows or anything like that. And so just using those 3 colours makes quite a nice harmonious painting. So anyway, I'm quite happy with the way that's turned out. But anyway, I hope that answered your question about the granulating paints. If you've got any questions, let me know. If you've got any information about these paints also, let me know down in the comments. But anyway, that's the demo done. So thanks for watching everybody, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers then. Bye for now.